How much home can you actually afford?
Hi, my name is Bilal. I'm a realtor in Merced County, California, but don't let that deter you. I can help you buy or sell anywhere in California. If you find any value in this video, I kindly ask for your support by liking, following, and sharing. Now, back to the topic. How much home can you afford?
Well, we're gonna make it simple and calculate it easily with two tools online. But before we begin that, I want you, the viewer, to understand what exactly it is that you're being qualified for. You are not actually necessarily being qualified for the price of the home. And I know that sounds a little confusing, but hear me out. What you're actually being qualified for is the monthly payment, which includes multiple moving parts, such as principal, interest, property tax, homeowner's insurance, potentially PMI, and potentially HOA. And all of these things will contribute to your monthly payment, which is what the lender will look at in order to determine whether or not you can actually afford the loan. So you keep that in mind. So let's use the two tools that I talked about earlier in order to calculate your monthly costs. We're first going to go to a website called Mortgage News Daily, and this site provides pretty accurate assessments on mortgage rates every single day. And as of recording, the rate for today is 7.01% for a fixed 30-year conventional loan. So now you and I are going to head back to Google now. Now you're going to be putting mortgage calculator in your search bar. Make sure that once you're here, you're gonna put include taxes and fees to get an accurate calculation. I'll be using $400,000 as our example home price. Now, let's say you happen to save up 10% down for the property, and it's a 30-year fixed conventional loan, which we saw had a 7.01% interest rate. But remember, since we didn't do a 20% down payment for this conventional loan, we'll have another monthly fee called PMI. If you want to learn more about loans and what PMI is, take a look at my other video about FHA versus conventional loans. Anywho, these two will auto-populate, but the HOA fee will not. This might not even be applicable to you because not every property is part of HOA. Certainly do check though. That information will be usually put on the listing, but if you can't find it, you can ask a realtor if you're working with one. All right, let's get into income and how much you can qualify for. So let's imagine that you and your spouse make $100,000 a year and you both are W-2 employees. I mentioned that because if you're a W-2 employee, lenders will look at your gross income. However, if you're not a W-2 employee, and if you're self-employed, lenders will actually look at your net income. So let's imagine that you're self-employed and you also make $100,000 a year, but you write off $30,000. Lenders will only look at that $70,000 to qualify you instead of that $100,000. So if you're self-employed, write-offs might save you in taxes, but it also might restrict you in home buying. So do consult with a financial advisor or your lender to find out how much you should write off in order to qualify for a sufficient loan if you're self-employed. So let's get back to the W-2 example. What lenders are going to look at is something called DTI, otherwise known as debt to income ratio. The maximum acceptable DTI ranges from 28% to 50%. For this example, I'm going to be using a good 40%. So what you want to do is take your annual income and multiply that by 0.4, otherwise known as 40%. Now, in my example, I'm going to have 40 grand. And once you've gotten that number, divide that by 12. This number is what you would qualify for if you had absolutely zero debt. So let's use the numbers for my example. The estimated mortgage payment is going to be $3,097 based on the numbers that I put in there. And if you remember correctly, I have a budget of $3,333 if I have zero debt. But now let's imagine if you did have some debt. So your lender's gonna get a credit report, and of course it's gonna be to find out your score, but they're gonna see everything that's on that report, such as if you have a car payment, if you have student loans, if you owe money to the mafia. Just know that they're gonna see it and it'll be deducted from your budget. Let's say you have a monthly payment of $600 for your car, $200 monthly payment for your student loans, and $150 for any debts that you have on your credit card. All of this is gonna be deducted from what you could be qualified for. So in this case, our $3,333 is going to get attacked by that, which will leave you with a grand total of $2,383. Obviously, this now lowers what you could be qualified for by a drastic amount. You might be asking yourself, what are you going to do at this point? First of all, and the most obvious solution is you can find a lower priced property. But what if the house you found was your dream home and you couldn't bear to exist or breathe another breath unless you had the keys to it? I'd say that you're a little bit excessive, but there's probably still hope. So firstly, what you can do is increase the down payment. Maybe you can put down 33%, 35, 40%. You can also have someone co-sign like a spouse or a partner so that you guys can combine forces and have a higher income. Or you can get your debts paid off. Now, all of these might sound a little difficult to you, but don't worry, because you can actually combine all of these things in order to attack this loan. And I actually recommend that. Maybe you lower the price of the home. Maybe instead of 10%, you get 15% down payment. And maybe you do co-sign with someone. And maybe you do get some of your debts paid off. Not everything, not all your debts, but you get some. And once you combine all of these together, you're able to afford the property that you want to afford. Now, remember this. Just because you can qualify doesn't mean you can afford. You should compile and observe all the monthly costs when living in that property, such as utilities and maintenance. Lenders are not your financial advisors. What they do is they gather your information and they decide from there that this person can be trusted to pay off this loan with ease. They are not aware that you might spend $800 on your teapot collection or $1,000 on groceries every month. Make sure that after you're qualified, you're absolutely comfortable with sending that $2,000, that $3,000 toward your mortgage payment. The general rule of thumb is that you shouldn't spend more than 28 to 30% of your gross income on your mortgage. Now, if you can comfortably afford more than 28 to 30%, like let's say maybe 35%, because you and your spouse, or perhaps yourself, are very conservative in spending, then that is a decision for you or you and your partner to decide on. Before you make the purchase though, I'm going to ask you 3 questions that you should keep in mind in order to be financially responsible. Firstly, are you absolutely comfortable with spending this much money every month for the next 30 years? Really ask yourself that, and do not count on the rates to go lower. Allow that to be a bonus for you. Secondly, are you going to be holding this property long term? So maybe 10 to 15 years. Don't buy now and sell a year later, because you will lose money from closing costs alone that are associated with selling your home. Remember, you will lose money if you sell your property at a bad time. But there never really is a bad time to purchase if you are ready to do so. And lastly, please, when moving into your property, have maybe 3 to 6 months of savings so that it'll be your cushion if anything were to go wrong. In today's market, if you want to be a homeowner, do so, but please, I beg you to be responsible, because a home is supposed to be a home. You don't want to live in a sad house poor building where you wish you never had bought it at all. That is not what a home is supposed to be. Anywho, if you need help regarding anything related to real estate and you're in the market and you want to talk to a realtor or someone, just remember, you better call Bilal. That's me.